Hello everyone, Rich Hagan alongside Matej Big Z Zatlkai here in the booth. Alvaro Sanchez Lopez is on the left of your screen, and David Brooker, the 2002 Magic the Gathering European champion, who also made the top 8 of Grand Prix Utrecht just a couple of short weeks ago, is here, and we are going to rock and roll. And Matej, David Brooker looks like he is still on the black-green deck that took him all the way to the top 8 last week.
I'm a little surprised because I talked to a lot of people, and even though some people liked the green-black a couple of weeks ago, has all changed. A lot of the green-black players are switching to the Mardu decks, the 4-color copycat decks, and so on. But I'm happy to see David Brooker just sticking to his guns here.
Well, it's hard to get off a deck that's piloted you all the way to the top 8.
Exactly.
And it's going to be a mirror. It's Walking Ballista with 1 counter off 2 mana for Brooker. Alvaro Sanchez Lopez of Spain opens up with the Winding Constrictor. Here's Rishkar Pima Renegade for Brooker, so that's counter on Rishkar, second counter on Walking Ballista, pass the turn.
Yeah, but no answer to the Winding Constrictor right away, and we have seen the Winding Constrictor get out of hand very quickly, so let's see if Alvaro Sanchez Lopez can maybe punish David Brooker here. With a Rishkar of his own, that would be probably the most brutal play, but I don't think he has one. I think I see a Grasp of Darkness, which is decent enough, and Long Tusk Cup is a nice card as well, but nothing to really punish the start of David here with no removal. See, oh, but look at that. Alvaro Sanchez Lopez has another Winding Constrictor hand, as well as a Blossoming Defense. He could actually play it and protect any of them, but he goes for the Grasp.
Right, so the Walking Ballista, there'll be a response here of 2 damage, but to the fakes, which could become relevant later on, but is nonetheless not the most useful use of a Walking Ballista generally. Winding Constrictor is going to come in.
Ooh, this is risky right away. Attacking a 2-3 into a 3-3 with a green mana up. Like, alarm bells must be going for David Brooker, who has the suspect Blossoming Defense, and this is telegraphing the play. And on the other side, it also means that now David Brooker knows there's a Blossoming Defense, so he can play around it with for his future removal spells. It was a
unless you just stone cold bluff.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't think he would go for it in this regard. But still, a very bold play from Alvaro. But on the other hand, it also kind of reveals part of his hand already.
Now, if instead of you, Matej, I had Paul Chion next to me right now, he'd say it's game over. And the reason he'd say it's game over is we've seen Tireless Tracker followed up by a land, and the land was an Evolving Wilds followed up by a land. and he says that is just one of the most brutal things you can do in Standard right now. He calls that game over. Obviously, he's joking about in reality, but nonetheless a super powerful play. Yeah,
it's just a big stream of card advantage. Sometimes this is what you need in these matches where you need to get removal in your hand. You need to get those Verger's Gearhogs, because those are the biggest plays you want to be doing in this sort of matchup. And speaking of big plays, I think Alvaro drew a Rishkar of his own that I mentioned in the previous turn, and now he can make a really big Winding Constrictor 4-5 alongside a 4-4 Rishkar, which on this board looks pretty good.
Yeah, Winding Constrictor is definitely an alarm bell card. You see it down and you really want it gone. Alvaro Sanchez Lopez has a Grasp of Darkness, or had a Grasp of Darkness, and that's the kind of card that David Brooker would have liked access to, as now we see it again. 2 counters on the Winding Constrictor and 2 counters on Rishkar Pima Renegade.
There's one thing I really like about this. By not attacking with the Winding Constrictor, he leaves up green mana thanks to the Rishkar ability to keep up the Blossoming Defense, but it's a little concealed where it's not immediately
not quite
obvious.
So obvious.
Yeah, it's not so obvious, but he does have the green mana at his disposal to potentially play a Blossoming Defense if he so desires. But I'm sure with David Brooker having played this deck quite so much during the last couple of weeks, I imagine that he's fully aware of Rishkar's secondary ability.
Now, Brooker has a Winding Constrictor, which would put him on parity in that regard, but Sanchez Lopez has another one in hand. And once you've got 2 Winding Constrictors, all sorts of bad things happen. There you see the curly-haired master from Germany, Winding Constrictor. Down comes another land, so another clue. And looks like another Tireless Tracker and maybe a Natural Obsolescence.
It was a Natural Obsolescence, which I quite have liked, and it's a decent enough card in these matches where it can kill the Walking Ballista, kill a Verger's Gearhog. So it has quite a lot of uses. It's probably not at its best against a 4-color copycat deck, but you can still nab a Thopter, so it's not completely dead. And now it also gives them the flexibility of leaving up 2 mana for either the Natural Obsolescence or sacrificing a clue and starting to get the card advantage engine rolling.
Yeah, and Sanchez Lopez a little constricted on mana. He's sitting at 3. We see a Verdurous Gearhulk there. We see a Walking Ballista. We know he's got another Grasp of Darkness. Went to tap 3 and then have another thing. And that's a Long Tusk Cub as well. So this is the more... I think it was Jacob Wilson was playing this at the Magic Online Championship, trying to be black-green, very aggressive as far as possible. Here's Walking Ballista, just for 1, though.
Huh? But thanks to Winding Constrictor, it is a 2/2. That's nice.
Right.
Alvaro Sanchez Lopez could have played another Winding Constrictor, but at least he has a tapped 4th land. But I assume he'll want to go for a big Verdurous Gearhulk next turn. But now he can't really... this is like the tricky spot where, like, who blinks first? Yeah, so David Brooker went to sacrifice the clue, knowing full well that Vulcan Ballista can kill it in response. He could have waited to find a better spot for it, but ultimately I think it's a decent enough trade, especially because he has 1/1 Tireless Tracker.
Yes, I was just going to say having another Tireless Tracker back is great news for Brooker, and he does seem to be, certainly in terms of hand, pulling away a little bit with those clues on the battlefield and the potential for more. As we see 1, 2, 3, I think this is going to be the replacement Tireless Tracker. Yes, indeed it is. But no additional land to trigger, so he won't go back up to 3 clues.
Yeah, and it was interesting. Alvaro, on his turn, he had more mana at disposal because he has 2 creatures with +1/+1 counters, right? So the Rishkar can tap, ability can be used to tap any of them for green mana. So he could have played the Walking Ballista for 3 just by tapping the Rishkar and a land, and still would have had the green mana for the Blossoming Defense. And by playing it this way, he probably could have killed the Tireless Tracker and still have a Walking Ballista left in play, which then on his turn now would have tapped for mana as well.
Now, the big hope, presumably, from Brooker's side is that if there is a Verdurous Gearhulk on the way, which we, of course, suspect there is, that the counters are going to go as far as possible on the Gearhulk itself, because that's something he can natural obsolescence away. And if I was Brooker, the potential to try and kill something off and then sort of reduce the options, give as few Verdurous Gearhulk targets as possible, knowing that then you could untap with the natural obsolescence and kill off the Gearhulk. But Sanchez Lopez having a think about where he wants the counters to go. So we're not going to see those represented by dice. And so here's Grasp of Darkness to take out Rishkar before it gets above 4 toughness. He's going to tap it for mana. And there's Blossoming Defense because, well, that's what we knew was there since the beginning of the game, pretty much. And so how backbreaking is that?
It's pretty backbreaking, but it depends on how many counters he decided to put on the Gearhulk. But he actually went in to make a big Winding Constrictor rather than the big Verdurous Gearhulk.
6 counters on there. That can't be natural obsolescence away.
No. So I like the way Alvaro actually decided to spread the counters around. He could have went for a bigger Gearhulk, but it's actually a good play in this regard.
So that's 8, 9, 7, 6, 6, 6. Is that right?
Yep. 6. There's 2 6/6s and 8, 9. Yeah.
Oh, right. 2 6s. Yeah, sure.
All right, there's not a Rishkar for David, but I think also he has Walking Ballista and Rishkar. I mean that's what you when you said like Tireless Tracker. Oh, it's game over. It's a good card, but in this sort of matchup, which is really swingy, I mean it's nice if you can keep the board keep board parity. But when your opponent is playing Haymakers turn after turn, thanks to the unanswered Winding Constrictor early, and you have a problem.
Yep.
I'm sure David can make something happen here at least. The good thing about this play from David is the fact that the Gearhulk getting the least counters is best for him because of natural obsolescence. It also means there's no trampling creature in play, and so David maybe can race in such a manner that he can leave some creatures on defense and try to survive that way. So he does go for the natural obsolescence, kills off the Gearhulk, and now he can swing back for at least 8 damage, but actually he's going to leave it all back. He's probably going to go for a big double or triple block if he gets the chance.
Yeah, if he gets the chance. 8, 9.
It's a big snake.
For black and green. It's an anaconda, isn't it, basically?
It's a genetically modified anaconda.
Yeah, okay.
It's just huge.
Fair.
or maybe it's like like Transformers and so on with some extra parts sewn on it, and just being like a robotic Cobra. And because like the Gear Hog, I assume it's helping out. It's just putting some extra gears on you.
Yeah.
More just arms or just more strength to really constrict you.
We really are the flavor masters, aren't we?
No,
Matej?
I'm
we're so there.
I'm personified from the hashtag flavor fail. I mean, if Ben Stark wasn't catching all the heat.
If Ben Stark was watching right now, he'd have things to say to us, that's for sure.
I'm pretty sure I'd be in top 3 of these sort of people. No, but honestly, I do like the stories that pop up from time to time, but yeah.
Just sometimes the interaction of cards, and you can see in the background there Alvaro Sanchez-Lopez just getting a ruling from one of the judges in the feature match area. Near side in the middle was Esther Trujillo. We got a little glimpse of Esther there. She's up against Sergio Mendoza. We'll try and look in on that match. This opening game, though, pretty grindy. Here's Winding Constrictor number 2. The itty bitty snake.
Yeah, now you can see what Alvaro was asking about. It was an interaction between the legendary creatures.
Sure. What goes on when I make the second Rishkar?
And this is exactly what's going to happen.
Answer: I run out of dice.
Pretty much
is what happens. And David Brooker's about to run out of game, I think.
Yeah.
Quite soon.
Ooh, but look at this sneaky play.
Yeah, gets to make Hissing Quagmire.
All right, and he can probably take 9 here if you so desires. It just makes me wonder why he didn't attack at least with one of the other creatures. I mean, he could have played around the removal spell. Now he has to decide which creature he wants to kill, because remember the Quagmire does have Death Touch, so he can kill whatever it blocks. And again, kind of Alvaro maybe falling a little bit for the trick that he was trying to represent in the early game. Rishkar, Pima Renegade, generating the extra mana to animate us in Quagmire.
See, as I have no mana at all.
Exactly.
Look at my tapped lands. Nothing to see here at all.
Yeah, tough spot for Alvaro though. Look at for David. I mean, he's facing 9 potential damage here from the Rishkar, and he's going to take it. So he's going to go down to 1 because he wants to keep his board as big as possible, hoping maybe for a Virgil's Gearhog of his own. No, just the land, but he does have a Walking Ballista as well.
So presumably both the Quagmire and the Winding Constrictor were hissing that turn, basically in that little fight. And there's another one for Brooker.
Yep. And leaving mana open. I quite like the small interaction between Winding Constrictor and the Tireless Tracker, getting counters for sacrificing clues, so at least that can make the tracker into a 5/4.
Incidentally, Hissing Quagmire also available for Alvaro Sanchez Lopez. Get it right.
Yeah, Spain, right? All these long names. Makes it hard for us. But I assume we're just lucky that David has a very simple name. We've seen some long German names.
I'll leave a note for Toby Henker that in future the feature matches need to be Ben against Fred. Or Billy. We can cope with Billy. Here's Long Tusk Cub. No energy floating around at the moment. Ooh. And now here is Nissa coming down.
All right. So it's this has changed very quickly from a race.
This is plant time.
Yeah, and it was a race until very recently, but now it's like war. Both players getting their big ground guys up to defeat. The problem for David Brooker is that he has to keep a lot of blockers back because he's on 1. So even the plant is threatening with Nissa still on the board. Look at that. David Brooker's just churning through. And he forgot about the interaction between the Winding Constrictor and the Tireless Track. He only put 1 counter every time he sacked it. It doesn't work that way.
No.
It should. It's whenever you place a counter on a creature, so I think it should work. Yeah, I don't think you should. In
theory, you can't forget it.
Yeah,
right.
If you put 1, you should have put both there. So, since it happened in 3 separate instances, the Tireless Tracker should be very big now. It should be a 9/8.
Irish Exit, incidentally, in chat, Matej says, Matej Zatlkai complaining about names.
Right. Yeah, that is a bit ironic, isn't it?
Well, the name's fine. It's just no one would ever guess that that's how you spell the way your name is pronounced.
Sure. I can see that. But ultimately, that's why I'm called Big Z, because that's easy.
There is that.
Yeah.
I decided a long time ago it was worth getting your name right.
Yeah. So now a judge is getting involved, explaining the situation. Yeah, and you can see a judge always makes sure to read the card as well, just to make sure he knows what's happening.
Chemist Veer in chat says, just tuned in. Any interesting decks aside from Mardu, Black, Green and Sahili? Well, so far, no. Just to let you know what's going on is that we're still, if you like, flying blind. We're basically picking feature matches on names. We wanted to get David Brooker back in because he had an interesting storyline from a couple of weeks ago, making the top 8, coming back to Magic after many years away from the game. And similarly, Esther Trujillo, one of the best Spanish female players, and we wanted to bring in Segi Sushalski, who has 3 Grand Prix top 8s. We didn't know what they were playing, didn't know what their opponents were playing. As the day goes on, and we get a chance to collate all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of deck lists that are here, and we get a better sense of what people are playing, whether people are playing interesting decks, whether we're seeing some blue-black improvise, blue-black control, whether we're going to see turbo fog, and so on. I think we're going to see turbo fog.
Okay, sweet.
Just like we did. I think Roy van der Erve is here again this week. And so my hunch is that we'll be able to see some of those decks. But right now, we're just letting, in a sense, you're getting an accurate reflection of the early part of the tournament, where lots of people are going to be on black-green, and lots of people are going to be on Mardu, and lots of people are going to be on 4-colour Sahili. But it's still early, and not only will we be showing you lots of Magic and hopefully some different decks as the day progresses, but at the end of our coverage from here, we will momentarily, it should be literally within moments, we will be taking you across the pond to Grand Prix New Jersey for live coverage of the back end of their day one. They've got plenty of stuff lined up from the early part of their day one, and you'll see all the late rounds live as it happens with Marshall and the team from Grand Prix New Jersey. So a huge weekend of Magic lined up for you here. And lined up on the left-hand side of the board, Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, 7 counters on Rishkar, Pima Renegade, Winding Constrictor, Long Tusk Cub, and a little plant. On the other side, Walking Ballista, 2 counters, a Clue for Brooker, Tireless Tracker with 3 counters, which should have been more, Rishkar, Pima Renegade with 1, and a Winding Constrictor of his own.
No. We'll find out shortly what the judges rule there, because I think the problem is that David Brooker knew that there are counters to replace, but he just didn't realize that each should be doubled. But on the other hand, he shouldn't be able to forget, but the turn is already passed, and he demonstrated he knows what Winding Constrictor does once he untapped, because he did play a Walking Ballista for 2 mana, and he put 2 counters on it, so he apparently knows what a card does. But I think the judges are now talking about if it is possible to forget to put the counters on Tireless Tracker.
Okay, sure. Question in the chat, are there any Japanese pros in Barcelona, asks Ligigra. Well, yes, there are. In particular, I can offer you, let me take a little look here. We've got Toru Inoue with 2 buys. I guess the biggest Japanese name here is Yuta Takahashi. He's here, the king of the fairies. Looking through some of the players with 2 buys. Shota Takao is here as well from Japan. I say Toru Inoue. We'll see him in round 3 feature match action if that all works out. So they're going to back up and add the counters is what's about to happen here by the looks of things. They're backing up a turn, it sounds like. So, okay.
Yeah, so it's just going to mean that the Ballista is going to get back into David's hand. He's going to untap his mana, return a land that I think he played for his turn. Tarasek is going to get the counters. I don't think ultimately it's going to change anything, but I think at least one player is going to get a caution or at least a warning.
An interesting comment from Mistress KB in chat. Do some of these players just pick a deck without even doing some practice with it? Now, I appreciate that the tone of that question is basically to say, because clearly that would be nuts and who would ever do such a thing? But the reality is, if you come to GPs, if there are 1,200 players in the room or 1,300, whatever it is, actually, yes, quite a lot of people will have sat down on Tuesday or Thursday of this week and gone, I don't have a deck. I'm going to a GP. I never play GPs, but it's my local GP. I've been playing for a year. What should I play? And someone says, here you go. I tell you what, I know you haven't got much of a collection. I'll give you a black-green deck. You can have a black-green deck. Here you go. Play this. And it's like, what do I do? Well, basically, you make some creatures, and then you put counters on stuff, and have a couple of games. And you have a couple of games at your local store. You come down, you play in a trial. You play 2 or 3 games, whatever. A lot of people are very inexperienced with their decks. But we're going to head across. There's an appeal going on in our match. We'll get back to that when we can. Here's Esther Trujillo, though, at 1-0 against Sergio Mendoza. Esther on the right of your screen. And she is piling in with Scrap Heap Scrounger. You see an Thraben Inspector there. And a Thalia Heretic Cathar. She's also got Veteran Motorist and Heart of Kieran. Up against, well, there's a Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. And there's a Whirler Virtuoso. And if that energy is right, Sergio Mendoza's at 16 energy. That's a lot.
Geez, and with a Whirler Virtuoso in play as well. And the problem is the Thalia Heretic Cathar. Means that all the Thopters enter the battlefield tapped. So, Esther just had a very big attack and also has that Toolcraft Exemplar now added to the board. And Sergio's going to make, I'm assuming, a lot of Thopters when he untaps. Oh, before he untaps, rather. And I want to get back to the thing about choosing a deck that you've never played before, because
right.
I think that there's an extra layer to that among pro players, which we can talk about.
Okay. Energy up to 19.
Where's the Marvel? And now Sergio has the tough task of deciding how many Thopters I want to make. And he actually, I think, goes for the right amount. He uses 12 energy to make 4.
Okay. And why do you say that's the right amount?
Because you need 6 for Aetherworks Marvel. So
Fine.
If he untaps and draws the Aetherworks Marvel, he could potentially use it immediately to flip it and spin the wheel and try to dig for a big creature. Now Sergio, I think he has a Eldritch Deepfin in hand as well. Yeah, Servant of the Conduit.
Yeah.
So I think he can survive at least for a turn, but he's firmly on the back foot here.
Yeah, and he'll recoup energy, of course, if he ever finds a Marvel, if things start dying. Yeah, it comes into play tapped, up to 9 energy. But Esther looking to close this one out on Mardu vehicles. Teamer energy, now do you see Teamer energy, if we say that Mardu vehicles and 4-color Saheeli are the big 2, is Black-Green alone at number 3, and is Teamer energy quite clearly number 4?
I would say
something like that.
Yeah, depends on. Really, the difference is very big. I think the difference between Mardu, all the variations of Mardu vehicles, and copycat decks, the differences are tiny. Depends on small things.
Right.
Then there's a small gap to Black-Green because it's not that well equipped to battle both the tier 1 decks. Okay. And then the gap is quite large for the rest.
And then if you were going to put, would you put Teamer energy next, or would you put the various like Dynavolt Tower decks next at 4?
Yeah. I think the Marvel and the Dynamo Towers are similar at that sort of level, around tier 4 or tier 3, depends on how we've segmented these, but yeah, just below. And ultimately, a good player can pilot them to a good result, right? We've seen at least 2 players make it into the top 32 at the GPU track with the Teamer Energy Tower.
Lucas Florent of France finished 10th. With Teamer Tower.
Yeah, Oliver Paul Grothman was also doing well. Andrei Strasky also made a 12-3 run.
Now, Oliver, I saw on social media, he's actually not here this weekend. He's in New Jersey. Yeah. And took the chance to go and see Chicago, not the city, but the musical on Broadway yesterday from the Haruya Pro team, which you were kind of instrumental in piecing together, right?
I'm behind. I'm the part-time manager for the project.
Right.
I make sure they do everything that they need to do to fulfill their sponsorship by the lovely Haruya shop in Japan.
Right.
All right. So Eldritch Deep Fiend being played, sacrificing the Roller Virtuoso. So I think this is gonna tap at least the Heart of Kieran.
So we've resolved the judge call at the other table. So we're going to head back there. Good to see, though, a little bit of that Esther Trujillo match for you. Meanwhile, David Brooker's at 1. And what they've resolved, and you can see the dice with 6 counters on, that tireless tracker needed the counters, and they have been placed on it. So Brooker at 1, Alvaro Sanchez Lopez at 15. I can tell you that, of course, they will have had extra time for this judge call, which means that they are already quite deep in the round and still in game one. There's going to be a long old haul to get this one done, particularly if it goes to 3 games. But we'll try and bring you other matches in the feature match area as we go. Trio trying to close the deal, 6 life points away from a 2-0 victory at the moment over Sergio Mendoza. And the match we haven't seen any of yet, Inigo Angriano of Spain against Sergei Sushalski of the Russian Federation. But we're going to stick for now with Brooker against Lopez. And Brooker still with his clue advantage.
Yeah, this is really funny because considering they were talking about a judge call involving Winding Constrictor, Alvaro played a tune with Ether and only added 2 energy with a Winding Constrictor in place. So he should have gotten 3.
Okay.
So it's I'll read out the card. If you would get 1 or more counters, you get that many of those counters plus 1 instead. So
right, and you don't get 2 energy. You get 2 energy counters. Right.
Yeah. Right. We're trying to get that fixed. I like the use of the Alvaro Antonio Del Moral Leon pro player card as a plan token.
Right.
You can see a lot of movement there from other players and maybe potentially the judges.
Yeah, that little sideways hand was. Yeah. Shouldn't that be 3?
Yeah, and you could see Alvaro's face. He was looking at the energy, and he glanced over the Winding Constrictor, and he's like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And there's it's like,
yeah, David's great.
This Winding Constrictor's like proving quite problematic.
Actually, funnily enough, David Brooker has a very good reputation among the old school German pros, like Kai Buda, but even Oliver Paul-Rothman. And since I'm still involved, partly at least, with Team Eureka, I actually know that David Brooker is going to prepare for them, with them for the Pro Tour in Moncat. So he's joining a contingent of German, Austrian, and this time a couple of French players. So it's definitely going to be interesting. And when he introduced himself, he said, "Guys, I'm a limited player at heart, but if I can, I'll learn as much constructed as possible." And here we go.
Incidentally, just a little official announcement from within chat from Yaroslav Kortz, who points out at Magic, Sergei Sushalski is from Ukraine. Not the Russian Federation, but Ukraine. So apologies for that. So we will see Sergei Sushalski in action in this round, if we can. He was indeed the captain of the Ukraine national team at the World Magic Cup. That's right, Yaroslav, and thank you for pointing that out. Apologies for that one.
Yeah, I mean, 3 GP top 8 is very impressive because the first one you could see like, okay, maybe 1, then 2, okay, he's doing it again, and 3, it's fairly impressive. I actually got, I think, to cover at least 2 of those, and I was always impressed by the way Sergei was playing. So I would just assume he'd probably do a lot more if he traveled to a lot more GPs,
right? Which
is not always that easy.
So Verdurous Gearhulk from David Brooker is going to get Walking Ballista.
All the counters.
Up to 45 counters. No, up to
9.
8. Yeah, 9. Now 8. Plant dies. 7 plant dies.
Okay, so he's going to shoot the Long Test Cup for 1. Try to let it resolve. It shouldn't matter that much, but Alvaro can add some counters. So
at some point, there's some energy going on.
Yeah, exactly. So he just needs to make sure that he's going to be able to shoot it down effectively. So this is the point where you should really know how the stack works, how abilities resolve, when you can respond to what. So.
So Brooker is going to have a tireless tracker with 8 counters. Oh.
Yeah, that's a big tireless tracker. Again, we see a hissing Quagmire on Alvaro Sanchez Lopez's side that can trade off with the big tireless tracker, but then he loses a creature and he feels like he's so close, right? Because David Brooker is on 1, and he had a creature advantage for a long time. Look at that, just chump blocking with his Winding Constrictor.
Right.
This is not good news for Alvaro Sanchez Lopez. Even though David Brooker had won, I would put the advantage bar, if we had one, I put it firmly in David Brooker's favor now.
That said, though, Alvaro Sanchez Lopez goes walking ballista off the top.
Sure.
Thanks for the game.
Yep.
Thanks for trying, but no.
Well, if he drew one, it's definitely one way to win.
Right.
Because I don't think he's going to get through on the ground. There's just too many blockers. There's 4 blockers on David Brooker.
5-mana Gear Hulk, it must be.
Yep. Not bad. At this point, I think it's best to put as much as possible on the Gear Hulk as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to make it into an 8-8, and now minuses the Nissa to make it into a 9-9. That's a big Gear Hulk, and that's a very big Tireless Tracker as well. It's at 13 power already.
So I think people know that I'm a blue mage and that I obviously love counter magic, but I must admit, watching games like this, I like counter magic too.
Yeah. I can see the appeal. You just make your grow board turn after turn.
I mean, who doesn't want to put 10 counters on a creature? That's the kind of creature I can get behind.
Yeah, I have to admit I'm a green-white, Timmy at heart, so
Okay.
I do love going wide and putting counters on everything. I am known for getting into top 4 of nationals with a green-white tokens deck, playing Overrun.
Okay.
So
Another Winding Constrictor for Brooker. Here's a clue.
this is getting gross. I mean, David is a little bit stuck on Rish cards in hand. He at least could have played one of them. Just to get a bunch of counters on his creatures, but he's actually staying back with his Tireless Tracker and with the rest of his board. He's scared of that 9-9 Gear Hulk, and then it can be a 10-10 Gear Hulk with another Nissa minus, which won't help him to get past the Tireless Tracker, who is at 13 power and 12 toughness.
Yeah, the interesting thing for Brooker is that, again, because of that possibility of a walking ballista, for all he's in control here, and he's got clues going on and just an endless supply of cards, supposedly, he really does need to get this thing done at some point pretty soon. Look at all the counters on that walking ballista up top now. That's going to be very close to lethal all on its own.
Yeah, it is.
In fact, just looking at how many lands he's got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, is he there? Does he just go activate? And that's going to be enough, and then just shoot you a gajillion times?
Yep.
I think that's where we are, aren't we? 4, 7, 10. 13.
3 more.
16. You're at 15. Shoot you. I mean...
All at you.
And thanks for playing.
Well, I mean, we did see some large walking ballistas 2 weeks ago in your trade, but I didn't expect to see a 16-16 walking ballista out of a black-green constrictor deck.
Right.
That was pretty cute.
That was awesome. Okay, so David Brooker leads only 1-0. That is the correct score. 1-0. They had a lengthy judge call here, so they could be going deep into extra time.
Yeah, and we actually got some information about what happened there in the end, because if you remember, the situation was such that David was putting some counters on the Tireless Tracker, but he forgot that he had a Winding Constrictor, so he should have had double the counters, 6 rather than 3. And actually, the ruling was that David Brooker got a warning for a game rule violation. Mm-hmm. And Alvaro also got a warning for noticing the violation and failing to inform his opponent, because it is not optional. So if he knew he was supposed to say something, apparently Alvaro thought it was an optional trigger, but it is not.
Right. Okay.
So that's why there was also the appeal involved, because I assume Alvaro was also appealing the warning that he was getting himself. So yeah, and these things take time to resolve, because you need to fetch the head judge, explain the situations from scratch. It takes a while, but ultimately we got the correct ruling on both sides, and both players got a warning, to pay attention in the future. Yeah,
and it's also worth saying, look, a lot of people in chat talking about the inexperience here. Now, actually, David Brooker is very experienced at Magic. I don't know so much about Alvaro Sanchez Lopez, but if you are either in a feature match area or just in general at a GP, it can feel very disconcerting when you get a ruling from a judge and you're not certain that it's right. And the idea of appealing to the head judge, just as a phrase, just that idea of summoning the person whose tournament this is very tough for some players to get over as a hurdle. But Matej, it's nothing to be afraid of, is it?
No.
You just go, okay, thank you for the ruling. I appreciate it. I'm not sure that it's correct. I want to make sure. Please, can I have the head judge? You've done nothing wrong by doing that. The head judge will hear you out fairly and a ruling, and then you've had the ultimate arbiter in the tournament. So if you are ever in that situation, don't feel bad. Judges are there to help you, and the head judges too, even though you will very rarely end up interacting them at a typical tournament because they are for just those unusual corner cases.
Yeah, of course, and you might have gotten a different ruling from a friend when you were preparing for the GP, and you thought something was correct, and it just always makes sense. If you're not sure, you can appeal to the head judge and ask him, and he's going to be the final decider, final arbiter, and that will stand. But you'll have the certain that this is the ruling that will be applied on the whole tournament.
So Esther Trujillo is done, so I presume that means that she won her match because she was 1-0 up and closing in on a win. Yeah, Esther Trujillo does indeed win. Also done is Inigo Anguiano. That's who you can see on the left-hand side of your screen. He was up against the Ukraine player, Sergei Sushalsky. Not sure who won that one. But we, of course, we have our main match still very much going, and we'll keep an eye on that one for you as we head into game number 2. We'll also try and find out exactly how much time these players have left, because I imagine that judge call took a fair old while to get sorted out. So we'll find out what we can for you there. So black-green mirror matches, that's what we're dealing with here, Matej. We don't have deck lists for these players yet. They'll be coming as the rounds progress. But what kind of cards are decent here?
Haymakers, removal, like big stuff, and then big stuff that can get that you can kill. So basically, you just want your Uranus paths, maybe murders, just more removal.
Right.
And ultimately, you would probably want some big beefy beaters. Even something like Tireless Tracker we saw here is not that big on the surface, but sometimes these games can take a long while, and the Tireless Trackers can really take over a game.
About 22, 21 minutes left for these two, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if we ended up with a 1-1 draw, conceivably, or maybe it'll be 2-0 to David Brooker. We'll see. Let me ask you about the smaller removal, things like Fatal Push, and in particular Grasp of Darkness. Now, -4/-4 sounds like a lot. It's designed to kill anything small, but realistically, a Winding Constrictor is left, you get one turn to kill it. Do you keep in Grasp of Darkness in this matchup?
I think so. It can still kill off a Verger's Guildhall before the counters resolve.
Right.
You can kill some other things before they go outside. And also, don't forget combat. It can definitely happen that your guys match up in combat and you use your Grasp of Darkness as sort of a pump spell.
Right.
In a way.
So my 10-9 runs into their 8-8, and their 8-8 gives my 10-9 -4/-4.
Pretty much, yeah.
And here's Fatal Push on Walking Ballista, so that'll be a point to David Brooker, getting that out of the way. Ballista, the card that won David Brooker that first game, eventually. Wonder how many cards he drew off clues in that game. I mean, I sort of want to say in the 7 to 8 range, somewhere like that.
That was my thought as well. And this matchup is a lot about the Winding Constrictors. If one player can ride the advantage of the Winding Constrictor for a while, that is very problematic. That was a sweet play from Alvaro Sanchez Lopez because he used the Green Belt Rampage to generate an energy. Then he played an Ether Hub to get 2 energy. So once he replayed the Rampager, it stuck around in play.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So that's all very big. What it doesn't do is naturally get bigger, which Winding Constrictor does.
Yeah, and now you see the downside of this because, again, an unanswered Winding Constrictor is putting a very big advantage for one player, and this time being David Brooker. And even though in the first game Alvaro was the one with a Winding Constrictor start and he was riding the advantage, he couldn't close out the game, and then David Brooker's Constrictors really took over the game. And this is the point where next turn David Brooker can play a really big Verger's Gearhulk thanks to the mana producing ability from Rishkar.
Which would be pretty much the perfect curve and would be very close, one would think, to game over. Because Alvaro Sanchez Lopez has had to pass. He's got Verger's Gearhulk in hand, ready to go if he's going to get that turn. Now, that land came into play tapped, which isn't ideal for Brooker. That means he would have to skip an attack altogether here if he wants to get a Verger's Gearhulk down.
This is the question. Should David Brooker can use the Fatal Push that he has in his hand to attack here He's not killing the green bell Rampager before attacking because it's smaller than both of his creatures, and David would rather kill the hissing Quagmire if Alvaro Sanchez Lopez decided that he wants to trade off his Quagmire for the Winding Constrictor.
Right. Yeah, and it's a double Verdurous Gearhulk. Two land, 2 Gearhulk is the hand for Sanchez Lopez. Now, because Brooker has a Verdurous Gearhulk of his own, so things are only really going to get worse for Sanchez Lopez. He's got a pretty straightforward play here, land and Gearhulk, and then try and work out where the counters want to go.
Yeah, I think he should be trying to play the Gearhulk and place at least one counter on the Rampager. He has to be very aware of Grasp of Darkness or Fatal Push coming in from David Brooker's side of the board. So he has to be very economical about the counters to have both creatures be big enough to kill either Winding Constrictor or Rishkar, and ideally trying to find a way to battle the potential removal. But he only has a tapped land.
Wow.
That's brutal.
Disaster and Fatal Push for the Rampager. Grasp of Darkness respond to kill off Rishkar. That's all well and good, but Sanchez Lopez is at 8. We're about to see a Verdurous Gearhulk. I was assuming that there's another tap land. Oh, battle of the land fight. But Brooker is piling on the pressure. Winding Constrictor in for 4. Hissing Quagmire in as well. Sanchez Lopez at 2. He can only go Gearhulk. This one's done.
He can animate Hissing Quagmire on the block and can use the Grasp of Darkness he just drew.
Oh, okay.
To
So
kill
that
the other
keeps
creature.
him alive.
Yeah, just barely.
In theory.
Yes. In theory, if David Brooker doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
Which is unlikely.
Well, at least he's alive in theory.
In theory, yeah. But this is a cool matchup sometimes where it's really swingy. Players are drawing haymakers left and right. And
that looks like a Gonti Lord of Luxury that's just arrived for David Brooker. But I think that's a luxury he doesn't need to afford right now. He is still looking at what do I want to do here? The Hissing Quagmire currently representing being a creature. He has the ability to just drag it back and turn it into mana. Troll at PC. Wow, what happened here when I left was on round 1 with 15-1 for Alvaro. Yes, Brooker stayed at 1 and then eventually put 15 counters on a Walking Ballista, 16 counters on a Walking Ballista, and aimed them all at Alvaro's face. That's what happened. Shoot you like a lot.
Yeah. It was an interesting game because kind of Alvaro using his board position to really create a big advantage on board, but having that one turn where he threw away a big Winding Constrictor, Hissing Quagmire, just turned the game on its head a little bit, and David Brooker had the Tireless Tracker clues to really close it out. So now, interestingly enough, there's the Gonti, and David Brooker just trying to build some semblance of board to force Alvaro into action.
Sanchez Lopez says, sure, you can look at my top 4. This is not going to be particularly relevant.
Fatal Push and a Winding Constrictor, I think.
Tireless Tracker.
Yeah, I think.
But he's put Fatal Push under, I believe.
Yeah. And it's still not over. David Brooker can now attack. He has that black mana up and his Hissing Quagmire. He's going to kill the Hissing Quagmire here.
With your Fatal Push. Just for the sickness.
Yeah, but now Alvaro can play the Grasp to at least make the Constrictor into 0-1 for the turn. But I think Alvaro is going to scoop up his cards once he untaps, because I don't think there's a card that can solve this situation.
He's drawn a Tireless Tracker, and he just never got to the Verdurous Gearhulks.
Yeah.
And Matteo, we see, we do see you get these come into play tapped lands, and when everyone's doing it, sometimes it doesn't matter, but sometimes they're a real cost.
Yeah, and we've seen it from the Pro Tour to all the standard GPs up till now. Getting to that 5th mana is so important, so much of the time. So you just need the 5 mana for big Release the Gremlins, for big Verdurous Gearhulk, for Sky Sovereigns and whatnot. There's just so much where you really need the 5th land. All
right, so great stuff. David Brooker wins by 2-0. He advances to 2-0. The long and winding path, maybe the Winding Constrictor path, towards another top 8 has begun for him. Well, we're underway here at Grand Prix Barcelona, Grand Prix New Jersey coming up later. In a little bit, Matej will be here in the commentator seat alongside Hall of Famer Rafael Levy. They'll be walking your way through round number 3. We're going to return you, though, to the Magic Online Championship final. What a finals it was. Josh Utter Layton against Lucas Blahon. And we will be back, blah, 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 which translates as, we'll be back live with round 3. See you in a little bit.